This is Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, episode number 183. Today, we're talking about why it's important for emerging and evolving leaders to be self-reliant and interdependent as they move through these challenging times. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. This is the only podcast that shows you how to leverage polarity intelligence, an essential competency for healthcare leaders, and the missing logic in healthcare, so you can create healthy, healing organizations and become a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable healthcare leader.
We are your hosts, Tracy Christofferson and Michelle Trosett. We've been best friends and colleagues for over 30 years. And during that time, we coached healthcare leaders across North America around how to create healthy, healing organizations.
Today, we coach healthcare leaders and leadership teams to live thriving, resilient, and balanced lives, combat burnout, and create the best places to give and receive care.
This podcast is for the unsung hero of healthcare, the healthcare leader. We want you to know we see you and we'll be here for you each week. In this podcast, we're going to challenge healthcare's industry norms, flip limiting beliefs, and share proven strategies so you can be your best self at work and at home, live and lead intentionally, and experience well-being and joy.
We are glad you are here and look forward to sharing the journey with you. If you aren't totally convinced this podcast is for you, just listen to a few episodes and convince yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. It's Tracy
and Michelle.
And you're listening to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And we're your co-hosts. And we're so happy to be here today. And it is January 2023. I just have to keep telling myself that. It's January 2023.
Another day in the studio in another year.
Yeah. And, we're 3 years post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Things are still...
sort of peri-pandemic in a way.
Yeah. It's like... unbelievable, right? It's
Yes.
just unbelievable. These are definitely VUCA times, Michelle.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Yes.
Volatile, there's uncertainty, there's complexity, ambiguity. Still continues.
I don't think that's going to go away.
No, that's not just in healthcare, that's everywhere. Right?
It is everywhere, and it's the sign of our times and just exponential growth of all around technology, science.
Yeah. Well, innovation.
Innovation, right?
We got to make the sounds, folks. We got to have the sounds.
I'm the sound crew.
And then we got to do the hand thing.
Oh, yes.
So if you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get all the things here, right? But what it also calls for is self-reliance and interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So let's just define those so we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. And when we're thinking about self-reliance, it's really kind of relying on your own strengths, tapping into your own talents to make decisions, to act. And then, the interdependence, that's really that state of being dependent on somebody else or on others.
Mm-hmm.
And that connection to others to achieve maybe, a shared purpose or a goal. And they're both equally important.
Yes,
especially if you want to be an effective leader, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for all you emerging leaders out there, this is an important concept that we're bringing to you today. We're giving you some tips from Tracy and Michelle.
Yeah. Ooh, here we go.
How to be self-reliant and interdependent.
Yeah.
And, what is it about both reliance and interdependence that leads to effective and successful leadership? What is it about these two concepts, these two pairs? And what happens if we don't have dynamic balance between the two? Like what's the outcome if we don't?
We're going to share those little tips with you today. And this is for you experienced leaders too, I think, right? Because we have patterns.
Yes. We
think we're the leader. We need to do it all ourselves, right? And so we really kind of tend to overemphasize the self-reliance. So emerging leaders, don't look at the role models that just do the self-reliance. So if you're anything like some of the tormented healthcare leaders that we speak with on a day-to-day basis, what your experience is, you question maybe whether you should even be in the role you're in, maybe more than once or twice a week. You fear you're disappointing your team or that you're failing almost daily. You have that kind of sense. And you start to feel like an imposter, right? Most of the time.
That's right. And if you're feeling or doing any of those things, and we guarantee you that you are that you're doing one or more of these things, you're not asking for assistance. So you're trying to do it all on your own. You're trying to address all the issues yourself, and the issues keep coming. And you're relying on your previous experiences and knowledge to carry you through. Just, you have what you know, and you're just going to keep on going forward. And what we know is that leveraging the tension or the energy that sits between the self-reliance and interdependence can increase the likelihood that you will experience more positive outcomes of each and more often. So it's really important.
Yeah, that you have both, right?
Have both.
And so, I think when you take actions to get both, then you're going to get positive outcomes of both. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the positive outcomes you can get when you are self-reliant and when you're counting on yourself. So one is you can act independently of others, right? You have the knowledge you need to do the work you need to do, and you do that. You have that autonomy to act on your own based on what you know is needed. You also are dependable. Well, hopefully you're dependable. That is a positive outcome you can have, is that dependability, right?
Yes.
You know yourself, you know your capacity, you know your skills, and you know that you can depend on those things to move you forward. And trust, right? You trust yourself. Again, you trust your capacity, your knowledge. And those are outcomes. You have that sense of trust and confidence, I think.
Yeah, and that feels
yourself.
Good. Those are positive,
Yeah,
right? That
they're
feels
very
really
positive
good.
outcomes. Yep.
And there's also positive outcomes when you experience interdependence. And that is, you receive support. Like, who couldn't use a little support these days, right? So you receive support. There's strengths in numbers and in relationships. That whole, you're not alone. And we hear this often from leaders, the power of interdependence, that you're supported and there's strength in relationships. And then you experience harmony with others. And that feels really great. And you can lift each other up. And through that interdependence, you can learn, you can grow just from what you're learning from others. And there's just a real appreciation, I think, that, we need each other.
Yeah. And I think, when you talk about the harmony, what kind of just popped up in my mind right now is just that you're not swimming against the current. Because sometimes when you're self-reliant and you're just going your own way, you can actually be swimming against the current and be in disharmony with others, right? So we'll get to those downsides in a minute, but that just came to me. So I had to share it or I'll lose it, That's kind of how it goes here.
Right. That's right. She was being self-reliant, folks.
I was speaking what I had to speak because I know myself, right? I know. If I don't say it now, I might forget to say it later. So what we're really talking about here between the interdependence between interdependence and self-reliance is a polarity. And if you've been listening to us for any time, you know that polarity intelligence is one of the pillars in our dynamic balance effect framework. And that includes having a polarity mindset. So identifying the polarities as well as leveraging healthy relationships, that connection piece, and dialogue, to really explore and uncover polarities and the outcomes that you can achieve collectively when you're leveraging those. And so we help people, really leaders, take that first step in understanding what a polarity is, being able to identify this polarity in our leadership survival boot camp. And then we go deeper with individuals around really understanding how they work and where they show up in their personal and professional lives in our True Healthcare Leader coaching program. But understanding a polarity, right? What is a polarity? And identifying them is really the first step that you have to take, right? And then getting that deeper understanding of how they all work and how this particular polarity can impact your effectiveness as a leader.
Yeah, I think that's the magic of polarities, and what we're bringing with having a polarity mindset and polarity intelligence is once you understand how they work, it applies to every single one.
Yep.
So leveraging this particular polarity in the dynamic balance and the movement that sits between the two, It's really powerful, and I like to think of it almost like a dance. You're aware of them. You're always putting action on both. Self-reliance, interdependence, and it requires self-awareness and to be vigilant. And it's an ongoing process, right? Polarities, it never goes away. You're always doing that dynamic balance. And then leveraging the principles of healthy relationships and dialogue that Tracy just mentioned, those are just foundational for you to really know yourself for that self-reliance. And then also to maximize that to be interdependent with others, the healthy relationship and the meaningful dialogue and leveraging those really deepens your understanding of how to navigate this particular polarity.
Yeah, it does.
And then it's also really helpful then to build psychological safety with you and your team, all founded on intention, trust, and seeing the potential and capacity in every single person that you are being interdependent with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get back to the episode in just a minute. But if you're like many of the healthcare leaders we talk with, you continue to experience the fallout from the pandemic. Your worst fear is while you continue your search for the new normal, you're letting everyone down. If you're exhausted before you even get to work, or every time your professional life bleeds into your personal life, you feel angry, and you feel guilty if you take any time to care for yourself, we guarantee you're doing at least one of these things. You think you must choose between your professional and personal life, you sacrifice your personal needs, or you make yourself accessible 24/7. That's why we created the virtual Leadership Survival Bootcamp.
In the bootcamp, you'll learn the survival tactics to manage the tension between your professional life and your personal life, develop a survival strategy, and create your own unique early warning system so you can reclaim your life and have a positive impact on your team. Registration will be open soon, so go over to missinglogic.com/new-events and join the waitlist today for the February 2023 Leadership Survival Bootcamp.
So, in what we know about polarities is there's these positive outcomes that we can get when we give attention to both. But if we overemphasize one more than the other, there are negative consequences, right? They're unintended because you don't
Right.
really intend to overemphasize one more than the other, especially if you're not aware that it's a polarity. But let's talk a little bit about what we want to avoid. So we want to avoid these by giving attention to both. And when we over focus on self-reliance, one of the negative consequences is that you don't receive support.
Right.
So again, it's kind of like you're out there on your own, right? And you don't have any support structures or mechanisms, other individuals to kind of lift you up. So you're kind of going it alone and you lack that support. And sometimes that makes the road pretty tough.
You become an island,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. The other is the decreased or diminished strength. So as Michelle mentioned earlier, right, the positive aspects of interdependence is there's strength in numbers, right? You have the power from the collective. And so when you're overemphasizing self-reliance, then you only know what you know. You don't have the power of others' knowledge. And it's kind of like being the Lone Ranger without Tonto. That's how I kind of look at it. You have diminished strength. It's just you against the world,
that's
right? And then you lack harmony with others, or there's that sense of isolation, that being an island, right? Being separate from everybody else. And then the last is really, it can be stagnating, and you can lack growth because you're not exposed to other perspectives. You don't have the opportunity to collaborate, connect, grow and evolve your own perspectives by being connected to others and learn new things from that connection. So it can really stagnate you from a leadership perspective because you're only going to keep doing what you know.
Right.
Relying on only the knowledge that you have.
Only you.
Mm-hmm.
Only you.
think that's a song, right?
It is. It is. And then there's also some negative consequences of over-focusing on being too interdependent, to the neglect of self-reliance. And what can happen then is you're unable to act independently, right? You're just like, where's my peeps? I can't make a decision.
Yeah.
It's like, and you can get too comfortable in that pole, and you can actually experience the negative consequences of that. And then also you can lose your autonomy. You can become so interdependent that you're not speaking for yourself. You're not standing up for yourself. You really lose that autonomy. And also you can lack dependability because you're just relying on the group. You're relying on someone else. And that can really impact your own dependability. And then the lack of trust, right? Because you're not moving forward with your own self-reliance. You're not advocating for yourself. And so people, you become too dependent on other people. And then that can also cause issues in relationships and effective leadership.
Yeah. And if they're not dependable or trustworthy, right, then you have challenges there.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Too. So you got to have that balance. So it's really all about leveraging the tension and knowing when to really step into your self-reliance and leverage that component, and when to leverage this interdependence, right? So making those decisions, and the more you do this, the more follow your instincts around this is something I need to move forward myself. This is something I need the collective. I need that interdependence with the rest of the team to move it forward, right? And so it really is about awareness, self-awareness for yourself. When am I overemphasizing depending on myself? When maybe do I overemphasize, leaning into the team or the interdependence with others? How can I get a better balance? Making mindful choices about this, really stepping back as you're about to embark on a project, or you're trying to, address a challenge, having that awareness, making mindful choices about this. And again, mindful choices is pillar number 1 in our dynamic balance effect framework. So we help leaders kind of navigate these things and think through these polarities and how to leverage them and make the mindful choices around them. But just imagine, a few months from now, you're operating from both of these, right?
Yeah.
Being self-reliant and having that interdependence, the strength that you're getting from that, advocating for your perspectives. When you are confident and taking bold steps because you depend on yourself, you have that trust with yourself.
Yeah. And then it also just kind of opens you up. So when you do experience maybe some competing or contradictory opinions, just lean into it. Just lean into it and recognize there's an interdependence too that's really important. I can learn and I can grow from it. And you also can lean into the healthy relationships so that you can, maximize your team efforts and have that collective wisdom to look at perspectives to look at different solutions from different perspectives and keep moving towards your shared purpose. What are you moving towards collectively? And then use that collective wisdom all along the way with the individual strengths of your team. And that's how you really find the most appropriate approaches to the challenges that you face. And you can act with intention, moving forward with that towards your shared purpose and your common goals.
Yeah. And I think too, it's an opportunity to deepen relationships, right?
Absolutely.
And, so that then you can have more trust, more dependability within the group as a whole. And, I think it's just a great opportunity. And, you don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
You don't have to be the Lone Ranger. You don't have to be Superman or Spider-Man or whoever it is, right? Like, it's
Wonder
okay,
Woman.
right? It's or Wonder Woman or, whatever. Like, it's okay to have an interdependence with the collective. So that's all we're trying to bring. And we work with leaders from all across the country. We have a group that we call the Court of Support. This is a group that meets every week. And they are leaders in all different kind of roles from different organizations. And they all, come they have their own independent reliance on themselves in relationship to achieving their goals, being the leader that they want to lead, be in the organizations, leading the initiatives for themselves. But even in the group that, they've become a part of, now they've developed this kind of interdependence with the people in the group because they all have a different wisdom. They all have different expertise. And they're starting and have been tapping into each other for guidance and support inside and outside of the group.
Yeah.
Like they'll reach out to each other. They'll just ping each other and say, "Hey, I need to chat with you. I've got a challenge here. You've got some expertise in this area. Can we collaborate?" It's just been really wonderful to experience and watch.
Yeah, it has. And then at a local level, as a leader, it's really a great opportunity for you to tap into your council infrastructure so you can experience too and build that self-reliance as a leader, but also recognizing that it takes everybody to really move towards that common goal. And so some examples for that is we've worked with some awesome leaders that when it comes to the financial issues that healthcare organizations are dealing with in the past and now, because it never goes away, is bringing it to the council members to say, this is our reality, this is our budget, and getting the different perspective so that it's not just you as the leader that has to hold all the decision-making when it comes to the financial aspects of your department or your unit, but you can also tap the people closest to the work that really can give insight and ideas on how to contribute to a better financial outcome than you could ever come up with alone.
Yeah, and I think what we learned is that, these shared governance councils or partnership councils, the intention, right? Everybody has a different expertise, right? So as a leader, you have an operations expertise, right? But you may have clinical leaders that have clinical expertise, and then your staff have the point of care reality expertise, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody's contributing something different to those decisions. And right now, especially, we see so many leaders trying to go it on their own, feeling like they're accountable. They have to know the answers. They have to set the new normal. They're being called to change the culture, but you can't do that alone. You really need to have that interdependence with your team.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
It's all of you that are going to set a new culture. It's all of you that are going to move forward. And, not being afraid to say, I don't have the answers. Let's talk about how we could do this differently. Right. I think that can be a missed opportunity if you have those kind of councils and you're not leveraging them.
Mm-hmm. In fact, our team at Missing Logic, we're self-reliant and interdependent as well, aren't we, Tracy?
Yes, we are.
In more ways than one.
Oh, yeah. We leverage that really well,
Yes.
I think, right?
Yeah, we do.
The two of us, and then in our work with our integrator, Karen, and, we all have our own responsibilities and things that we work autonomously around. But then we also have huge interdependencies with each other, and it takes a whole team.
Yes.
To do the podcast, with our producer Travis and Karen, and it's just we couldn't do that without the interdependence.
Yep. Everyone's suggestions and wisdom. And in fact, today, Karen, our integrator, surprised us in the podcast studio. We walked in and she had flowers here for us. And so we lift each other up. We do some of those positive things.
Yeah,
so it's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. So we live it too every single day. And we love sharing that with you too, and sharing what we've been learning with working with leaders with all of you. And so we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And we want to encourage you to take the first step yourself to building a polarity mindset by learning how to leverage the tension between your professional life and your personal life. It's such a core polarity for leaders, and you can do that by joining our Leadership Survival Bootcamp. And these are two aspects of your life that are great opportunities to create kind of the foundation that can really build on developing the relationship between self-reliance and interdependence as well. And the boot camp's awesome because you leave with a blueprint for action so that you can experience just more joy. You understand the dynamic balance at a whole new level. You can have more impact. You can be your best self at work and at home. And you can just get rid of that exhaustion, feeling guilty, kind of teach you how to just get rid of that. And you can sign up for our next boot camp on the early interest list from our website, missinglogic.com/new-events, so that you can be the first to know when the doors open. And we'd love to see you there. So join us, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, now a top-rated podcast for healthcare leaders. Please share this podcast with other healthcare leaders and anyone else you think would benefit. We are certain that if you found value in it, they will too. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And also, it would mean the world to us if you took a quick moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast player. It helps to get the word out about our podcast and incredible guests. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch our podcasts. You can also follow us on our Missing Logic social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time.